Our speaker for today is Distinguished Toastmaster Neil Gonsalves. Distinguished Toastmaster Neil, can you please unmute and repeat? I am a champion speaker.
I am a champion speaker.
I confirm that you're clearly audible. For the rest of the audience, this is a contest speech that will be presented. So timing guidelines are 5 to 7 minutes. Distinguished Toastmaster Neil Gonsalves, Titanic, Titanic, Distinguished Toastmaster Neil Gonsalves.
Okay, for a change, I'm gonna sit and deliver this speech. I hope it's okay because if I stand, I think the blur effect and I don't have much space around. I hope it's okay. Yeah. Okay. Oops. Great. How many times have you watched this beautiful movie, The Titanic? Once, twice, thrice? You can put in the chat box. How many times have you watched The Titanic? One of the greatest movies that has ever seen. Yes, so many times. 14 Oscar nominations, 11 Academy Awards, and James Cameron came out with this beautiful movie, The Titanic, that anyone and everyone who watches this movie cannot just forget. Toastmaster of the day, fellow Toastmasters, and the guests here, good evening. This beautiful movie, The Titanic, brings such nostalgic memories for me. I watched it during my childhood days, and yes, I watched it 3 times on the trot. I loved it for the way in which a tragedy was made into something so beautiful, a romantic movie with such beautiful scenes in it. My dear friends, if you're wondering whether Jack and Rose was real, well, Jack was real. There was a person called Jack on that ship, but Rose was not real. But there were a lot of things that was pictured so realistically. A tragedy that the biggest tragedy that the world has ever seen. Do you know how many people lost their lives that fateful night? On April 15th, 1912, when the ship hits an iceberg, 1,500 people lost their lives. Even today, we look at it as one of the biggest maritime tragedy that has ever happened. And yes, there were people saved too. 700 odd people were saved. Dear friends, I'm not here to talk about the movie. I'm here to talk about what happened after the ship sank. We all know the story of the Titanic when the ship was made. The architect or the designer of the ship goes on record and says, even God cannot sink this ship. Rest is history. On April 10th, when the ship set sail from Southampton to New York, instead of reaching New York in 4 days' time, it reaches the depth of the Pacific Ocean. Dear friends, a lot of people lost their lives, yet so many people were saved. Saved. There were 3 ships in the vicinity. There was a ship by the name Samson, which was only 7 nautical miles away from Titanic. And 7 nautical miles is really close. You can actually see what Titanic is going through. Those cries of those helpless people were seen and heard by this ship. But Samson never really wanted to help because they were hunting for seals. And you know, these seals are these illegal water animals that should not be hunted. And Samson was hunting them. So they didn't want to get caught and they did not bother to help. There was another ship 14 nautical miles away from Titanic. The ship was called Californian. Californian did not see what Titanic was going through, but Californian did see those flares that was lit up by Titanic. You would have seen that in the movie. Those SOS signals were received by Californian. But the captain of the ship, when he looked around, he saw a lot of iceberg around the ship. So he felt conditions were not favorable. So he goes and tells his crew, "We shall wait till morning and then we'll go see what Titanic has met." In fact, that night they could not sleep. They had to convince themselves the Titanic would be safe. Well, we all know of this ship. 52 nautical miles away from Titanic was the ship called Carpathia. It was heading in the opposite direction of Titanic. If Titanic was going from Southampton to New York, Carpathia was going from New York to Southampton. They didn't know where to go. In fact, when they received the SOS signal, the captain of Carpathia, he kneels down and he prays for direction. He asks his crew to go full steam in the opposite direction and they meet Titanic. It was this ship that saved those 700 lives that fateful night, April 15th, 1912. My dear friends, why am I telling this story to each one of you? Today, when we look around, we too can see a lot of Titanics around us. People dying, people asking for help, people who needs the helping hand that they so desperately need. You and me can also be like these three ships. We can be like Samson. Often we can ignore to people's needs and cries. We can continue in our selfish activities. Or we can be like Californian. We can wait for conditions to be favorable to go and help someone. I remember in my university days, I used to wait till I study the whole textbook to actually help my friend learn something. Or we could be like Carpathia. When we see someone in need, when we see a Titanic around us, we can forget ourselves for a moment. We can think of that person who needs help and go ahead and help that person. Because it is the goodness that goes around that comes back to you. Dear friends, wherever the story of Titanic is told, the good deed of Carpathia is also mentioned. Today, this evening, as you listen to me, my only prayer, and I urge each one of us to be more and more like Carpathia. Let us look around and let us save those Titanics. Because if we be a Carpathian, I'm sure the world would be a better place to live in. Over to you.
Thank you very much, distinguished Toastmaster Neil. Let's give him a huge round of applause. Not sure how many of you felt, but when I heard the title Titanic, I was taken back to the movie and pictured myself as Jack, at least till we heard Neil. So thank you, Neil, for sharing that. Um, can I now request the timer to share the timer report for the speed segment?
Yeah, DTM Neil took 6 minutes, 11 seconds.